We'll do a review on Likutei Sichos in Chelik Beis. This is the Sicha for Parshas Naso. And this Sicha, and the Rebbe explains that in the Maimer of the Friedrich Rebbe and Bossi Legani, he wants to bring out the concept that for a person to violate Hashem's will is considered a foolishness, but he brings the pasuk in which it talks about a woman going into seclusion. Over there, it says, "Ein odom over avera elim kenichnas by ruach shtus." So that's a foolishness. But the Rebbe asks, this is a very serious avera of a woman secluding herself, and if she did commit the sin, then that would be a very severe, that would be adultery. And here we're trying to say that every avera that you do is actually separating you from Hashem. Why did we choose to bring a proof from this part? Now, even though in the Gemara it's that way, but there needs to be also an explanation. The Rebbe will actually explain that the reason is that we are always responsible is because we are Hashem's wives. And as a wife, which means even our physical, our body, and our animal soul, we're like married to Hashem. And that's why everything matters. By a person who is married, and we're married to Hashem, even something, the Gemara says that Isha Ksheira Oisur Tzoin Baila, a kosher woman does what the husband wants. We do what the Eibishter wants. So this is why we have that extra responsibility being a wife from Hashem. And then also just for a suspicion, because we don't know that she did anything, that's still the lesson from this case. Let's go through step by step. In the Sicha, we're learning this Lilu Nishmas, Horav Levi Yitzchok ben Rabbi Chaim Tzvi, Tehei Nishmosei Tzurur B'Tzera Chaim. Aleph. In the Maimer Bossi Legani from Kveit Kiddushas, Meri Chome Admur. In the Maimer of Bossi Legani from my father-in-law, the Rebbe, is mevayer dem inyan fun shtus de l'umaze. So he explains the concept, the idea, of what does it mean, the foolishness of the other side, meaning not Kedusha, the other side of Kedusha, the other side of holiness. What is the idea of the foolishness? He brings a raya from them, and he brings a proof that that's foolishness of the other side, that the fact was a state kisishte ishtoi, a person whose wife will tilt away, and there the Gemara says that it's is tilting away is actually a level of shtus, it's a level of foolishness, and this means that's the shtus de l'umazeh. So the Rebbe says we have to this proof bringing from this is very meaningful. It's not just a proof to show sources. Bechlal is in Chassidus, Yeder Zach Oizgerech. Generally, in Chassidus, everything is calculated. Unaz membrengt araya from a posik, and when you bring evidence from a verse, is das nicht zu weisen bekiyas. That's not to show off that you have the knowledge that you know to find or to bring up psukim, nor das is abavais. But if you bring that means, that proves as their posuk hot hashayches to the minyan, that this verse has a connection to this subject. L'chayre, but it would seem is the shayches from posuk is ishtei to the minyan von shtus de lumazeh, the connection of this posuk that one's wife tilts away and goes into seclusion, to this idea of shtus de lumazeh, generally speaking about the foolishness of the other side. Was it them bring the right posuk? That's what we're bringing evidence from this verse is about the shtus lumazeh, verstandig in pashtus. So we understand very simply why he brings this posuk. Warum die droshas razal ein odom over avera linke nichnas by ruach shtus is from posik isishte ishte. So yes, the sages of blessed memory expounded that a person does not violate a sin unless it went into him a foolishness of a spirit of foolishness. So the whole uh, concept of a spirit of foolishness, which is learned from this pasuk, is from pasuk Kisishte Ishte. We learn it from the verse that his wife will tilt away, or it's a level of shtus, it's a level of foolishness for her to commit that sin. So we understand that connection, but the fact that we're learning out all Averas, which would include everything against the will of Hashem, from a pasuk which seems to have the extreme case. Alinke, aber bemis darf man das Gufe verstehen. So, but we need to understand how do we learn it out from this pasuk, which is such a serious such a serious offense for all for every Aveda. Warum? Seinen doch voran Sach, mein Mother Razal, there is many saying of our statements of sages with blessed memory. Was man bringt nicht auf sie Kinderayis von Pasuk. We don't have evidence, so it doesn't have to bring the Pasuk. You can say Einod Veda, Elim Kinderkas Baruch Shtuz doesn't have to bring this Pasuk. Musman Zogn, so we have to say as that Pasuk is Sishte Hota Basundere Sheiches to them Inyan von ein Adam even Aveda. I have to say that it has a connection. We're bringing this pasuk as evidence to ein Adam even Aveda nichnas baruch shtus. So that we understand what is the shaykhs. Why is the connection to this particular Aveda kasishte ishte to the general idea of ein Adam even Aveda? So first, the Rebbe is actually asking, generally speaking, why connect this Maimer Chazal with this pasuk? It must be that this pasuk gives out a specific idea of this Ein Odom Over Aveda Ruchstus. But noch mehr is not moving, but it's even more that is not understood. As is doch yesh bechlal Mosayim Mone. In 200 includes 100, which means if you say 200, then it includes for sure 100, but is talking Messiah. But if you say 100, you don't have two, you only have 100, not 200. So basically, if there is more, you have the less, but if there is less, you don't have the more. Since this is a more, it's a big Aveda. Okay, over here is shtus, but how does this prove in the less when you're not doing such a big avera that this is also a ruach shtus? B'meila, b'shas me will bring an arayim. So therefore, when we want to bring a proof as ein adam aver avera, elim kenichnas beruach shtus, the person does not violate a sin unless there is a spirit of foolishness. What are we saying? We're saying any Avera. We're not trying to say a person is not going to do adultery. We're saying Avera, meaning any Avera. Das ist nicht Tafkik in Harbe Avera. This is not necessarily a serious Avera, was man is chayiv for Kodesh, for which you would be punished by Kodesh. So to say an Avera of Kodesh is Ashtus. Not yeder Avera. Every Avera that you do, it is a ruach shtus. Even if it's a very light particular of the rabbi, the words of the scribes, that too is a ruach shtus. And not only a very clear Avera, nafilu that inyan from kadesh atzim b'mutalach. Even though this idea that one should sanctify even what is permitted, so it's not even an Avera. But he needs to sanctify himself even in permitted matters. And if he doesn't do it, it's also because of a ruach shtus. That's also, so everything is included in ein adam ever avera elim kenechle ruach shtus. How do we know everything is included? Because in Tanya, wer der kler der tam is then, Because then Tanya explains the reason why is this a spirit of foolishness to do an Avera. So it explains in the Tanya, Valeri Zoiver Dem Rotzen Elia. He is transgressing the wishes of above. And this would apply also in Kaddish Atzichaber Mutterloch, which is not directly a sin, but it is still the Rotzen Elyon, it's the will of the boss. Is there still the will of the above of Hashem? Und das ist doch euch in Kaddish Atzmachaber Mutterloch. This also would apply to sanctify yourself what's permissible to you. Is Favos bringt man a so why do we bring evidence from them that this is also a spirit of foolishness? Even when you are violating a little small Avera or even Kaddish Hatzcha Mutterloch, so we bring in, you're bringing it that his wife will stray, a Harba Avera, which is a very serious offense. As is doch ein Bechlal non but in 100 is not included. In 200. Over there, if it's such a serious offense, maybe that's a Ruach Shtus. But how do we know when we do a lesser event, how do we know that that would also be the same king, Nichnas Beruach Shtus? Why do we bring a proof from such a serious offense for something which is seemingly a very light offense? So the Rebbe explains that there's this very specific connection to the Sishtei Ishtei. The number one in base the Rebbe explains is because we are the wife of Hashem, and that's why every little offense matters. And in Ois Gimel, even if it's only a temporary, as later on it turns out that this woman had not committed any sin, that is also not supposed to happen, and that's why we bring this as the example. Base. The Shaykhs von ein Odom Aveda to Gesishte Ishte is in zwei Inyonim, is in two aspects. Aleph, der Din, number one. So we're going to talk about in this is about the first thing. The Din from Gesishte Goimer is by an Eishes Ish. This idea of straying is only if she's a married woman. She's an Eishes Ish, she's a wife married to a man. Und Davke, an Eishes Ish wird mit der Bia Azoin. It's specifically if she's a married woman, so through that relationship, she gets the status of a Zoina. But if this woman wasn't married, then okay, that's not considered, doesn't make her into a harlot, doesn't make her into a Zoina. Now, this is some opinion disagree with that, but that's the halacha. Hagam Rabbi Lezer halt as afilu ponui habola ponui also Zoina. Even though, according to Rabbi Lezer, he's of the opinion that even if someone who is not married has intimacy with a woman that's not married, also Zoina, he still makes her into a harlot, makes her into a Zoina. But this is of a menit ve'adas yochid. That's only an opinion of a single. That's the opinion of Rabbi Lezer. And the halacha is nitazu, the halacha is not so. So basically, the Rebbe wants to point out the reason why she becomes a Zoina is because she's married. The idea here that she's married, the says, as the tam for was the aveda is a fazeful negeya. The reason why this sin is so important is while she is an Eshes because she's a married woman. And azoy is inyan from ein odom aveda. That's also the idea that we say a person does not violate unless he has a ruach shtus. It's the married, the issue is here because what takes place when we violate, when we are an Eishes Ish of Hashem. By doing the Aveda, he becomes separated from godliness. Is there tam was yeder Aveda? So the reason why does every Aveda? Afilan Aveda Kala is a fazefil negeya. Even if it was a light Aveda, why is it so important? Why is that so touches that it's something we shouldn't do at all. Why? What happens? Well, Eden sein the Mebish's Yisha, because Yidden are the wife of Hashem. Wie weiter erklärt, as explained later on. And the Rebbe explains that the fact that we have a special relationship with Hashem, the fact that we are considered Hashem's wife, that makes us more susceptible, subject to the stringencies of not doing anything against the will of Hashem. And the Rebbe brings down our closeness to Hashem makes us more sensitive, makes us more intolerable for things that are against Hashem. He brings down from the Zohar, a state in Zohar. It says in the Zohar, as a philosopher gefragt by Rabbi Chaim. A philosopher asked by Rabbi Chaim, Ibal has Eden seinen der Am Hamufkar, since Yidden are the chosen nation, Parvos seinen sie schwacher von alle Völker. How come they're the weakest of all nations? So why are they weaker? They're weaker is because they can't tolerate they're sensitive, because just like the heart, which is a more important organ, cannot tolerate things that other limbs may because of its sensitivity, Yidden are weaker because of their special role, what they're standing, because of their specialty. What did Rabbi Lezer answer? As he says, that's the actual reason, because they are the chosen people. Since they are chosen of everyone, they cannot tolerate anything left over, sort of insects and crawling things. And that's why they can't eat it, though. That's why they're weaker. They can't. The goyim can eat those all kinds of treif, insects, but Yid cannot because of their sensitivity, because they are the chosen people. In the ruchnis, in the spiritual level, they cannot tolerate these non-kosher animals creeping and crawling things. But mele, and therefore does need so they can't also physically not tolerate it. They don't tolerate it. So basically, the fact that they are on a higher and more chosen level gives them more reason for not being able to tolerate something which is, they're not strong in that case. The Rebbe brings another example from the Maimer that he spoke. As the Rebbe discussed in the Maimer. That even though by the nation of the world, there are those that call God the God of gods. So for a goy, for the nation of the world to say that there is God, but they believe that there's another God, that God is the God of the gods, but there is another God also. So for them, Hasnit came Nerida, that would not consider a rebellion against Hashem. But by Eden, Vibals is einen Hecher, because they're on a higher level, their faris mit jeder Aveda kala verter anifrid betachlis. So therefore, even if it's a light Aveda, you become totally detached from Hashem because of their greater level. For a goy, that's not called merida, but for a yid, even a small Aveda makes him a totally separate from Hashem. Aufgeteilt in Ganzen from Gettlichkeit, he becomes totally separated from godliness. Matter the clip of Sidracha, the more than the clip of the Sidracha himself, because the Yid violates something that Hashem wants. A Yid is more intolerable for a Yid, even things that we can be tolerated by the nation of the world. Eden seinen geglichen geworden zu Leib. Eden are then completely compared to a heart. Nasevi the hearts, and just like the heart. weil sie ist der Mufkat von alle Worten, because it's the choices of all limbs, kann sie nicht selber sein, keep service. He cannot tolerate any leftovers or no good. I feel the daka and a daka, even the finest of the finest garbage, the heart can't tolerate it. Azoi zainen oichim. That's why are also the same likewise a yid. Yidden of the heart, they can't tolerate anything, even small, very light. The mitzvah we verstehen the Sichos. So with this, will understand the connection from kisista to another from this straying away to the point that person doesn't do an aveda. Eden seinen dem Eberster's Isha. Eden are Hashem's wife. The Eberster is their Baal, Hashem is the husband. And Eden seinen the Isha, and the Eden are the wife. And das is in alles man. This is an old time. Eich bisman hagos. No, one can argue. Also in the time of exile, maybe we've been divorced from Hashem during exile. Hashem is no longer our husband. But no, that's not the case. Not the case. It's still, there's a level of Ish and there's a level of Baal. There's still the man. He's still the man, but he's not fully like the Baal. The nafkemina for nitzter bizlaosid is what's the difference between now and the future? And we'll be once again married to Hashem. As itzter is the Eberster Baal. Now the Eberster is the husband. When laosid ish, and Hashem will be the man. In the future, the Eberster will be ish, not just the Baal. Merzokten posik, because we see this. This is in the verse on the answer. If them was the Eden haben geteilt, the Eden argued, as der Eberster hat doch sie abgeget. Since Hashem divorced them, so the Eden argued, alle Baal al ishtei la'achar gedushin. So what does the husband have an argument to his wife after he divorced her? So the Yidden are saying to Hashem, since the Eibishter divorced us, so why should Hashem have any rights and any complaints? So what does the Eibishter say? No. Where is the document of divorce of your mother that I sent her? The Eibishter never divorced us. To exchange them for another nation, God forbid, that's not possible. So we are still the wife, and Hashem is our husband. And therefore, since we are the wife, it says, a kosher, proper woman does the wishes of her husband, wishes what Hashem wants, is the far negeya yeder aveda. That's why every aveda is important. It touches every aveda. Mafila asmen is over averotzim kal. Even if you are just transgressing a small, light wish, was in them geht da rein kadesh atzmach b'mutaloch. In that small wish, we also include to sanctify the way you permitted. That's also it's a rotzim kal. Is menit oiser retzain habal? Then you're still not doing the wishes of Hashem, the Baal. Then you're not that kosher woman, the far. And that's the reason. Is b'shas mevilder klem. When you want to explain then with everything you become totally detached. And even items that are permissible are also important. How do we bring that out from a case to tell us that we are alive? We bring the verse when one wife strays. But this is not stam kingerai. This is not just an evidence. Pick a proof somewhere. No, they said the klerman. This is an explanation. Why is even such a light Sin, why is it so important? Vaila, the neshama, the nefesh habahamis, was the soul, the animal soul, the nefesh hativis, and the natural soul. All these parts of the person, his soul, the animal soul, the nefesh hativis, the guf, zayin, and the meibishtas isha were all Hashem's wife. And a kosher woman is one who does the wishes of her husband. That's why it's important, even a small wish, even even something small, because we are a wife and we are an isha, and in order to be an isha ksheda, needs to be ratzon baila. That's why we choose this example. And then yet there is another. That's number one. The Rebbe said, in addition to this, there is also a second idea over here. Gimel. The idea is here that we don't even know for sure that she committed a sin. Based that inyan from gesishte ishte, but even though we don't know, we still treat her as if she's guilty of something, even though we don't know, because the fact that you put yourself into suspicion, that alone is a fault. And a yid can't even do that. Based that inyan from gesishte ishte is the chnit as men veis as he's nit geworden. We don't know. It's not that we know that she became Tomei. As is mer nit was vinistero, she only went into seclusion. Und es kann gor sein, as is a teure. It's possibly that she is clean. Nor dos allein was vinistero. The fact alone that she had gone into seclusion, heistes kisishte meloshen shtus. Even that, without even doing anything, it's called already a shtus, a foolishness. When es haste meise behema, and this is called the act of an animal. She didn't do anything, but that alone, just the suspicion, was to leave them. That's why she brings a korban from barley versus wheat, but her korban is from barley because, as the Gemara explains, she acted like a behema. But the question is, she didn't really act yet that as a behema because she didn't do anything. In Plug, I mean, which have no restraints, no laws. The behemoths don't have any, only to stick to their mate. In Plug is nicht verstandig, but superficially we don't understand. Since we don't know that she's been defiled, why don't we assume on the assumption that she's kosher and she didn't do it? And also the majority of the Jewish daughters are kosher. Why does she need to bring a korban from the fruit of an animal, this barley, because we're treating her as if she acted like a behemoth already? The time of them is, the reason for this is, as those gufa was a gefinzich in azamatzav, the fact alone that she finds herself in such a condition, as men kon ir zayin of tuma, that you can suspect her for tuma, is thus an inyan for ma'aseh behema, then that becomes an act of a behema, just to be in such a suspicion. But by Bnei Yisrael, because when we're talking about Jewish women, darf kor mit zayin ki matzav uchshad, there need not be even a condition of a suspicion. So, and this tells us how important it is not to be in a place where it could be interpreted as a sin. That would also be a level of foolishness. But on the other hand, while that alone prohibits her, but still there is a easy way of return, and it goes even better. Bagamas dinim from Venistra Gufa is dos a ma'aseh behema. Although we're saying now that just the seclusion is an act of a behema. Uniberdem alein is the osur tzumbal, and just for that alone she's prohibited to the husband. Aberes is mended with the shol kala milbat. That's only for a short while. But mibaldas is nit tamei, since she did not really become tamei. as is mer nit was minister, it's only that she secluded herself. Is there noch wird sie zu ihm teuer, then she becomes back teuer. Metaphorically, the Yidden become back clean to Hashem, because this was only for a while that we were the suspicion. That she will become clean, and she will actually have children. She will seed, and she'll be blessed. And so is same thing is also Shasa Yid is over an Aveda. When a Yid violates and commits a transgression, but this is an inyan from Lachstus. That idea is a spirit of foolishness. Is does need kinyan from Tumah Lebailach Hazmeshalom. That's not really becoming defiled to her husband, God forbid. Boram as his dochu kvoidi. Because Hashem said, "My honor was those is the mitzvah lekimos bazederin." Every Jew has a spark of God. That's God's honor. God's honor. The Eibusher says, "La'achar le'et." Ukvoidi la'achar le'etein. I will not give my honor to someone else. So the spark of a Yid, Hashem doesn't take away. As his menit was l'sho, this is only that on a temporary basis. L'sho kalof. The Giton Lamaisa Behema, he did an act of an animal. Over soif. But in the end, it's Benikso and Israel Zara. The end, she will be clean and she will have children. But nobody will be pushed away, and everybody will come back. So therefore, even in the Golus, even when we are committing a violation, it's not even. So even a suspicion is a violation, but the violation is only temporary. This is nochatam of them. This is another reason for this. When we discuss the idea of the foolishness of the other side, we bring the verse of Sishta Ishta, but the mid Vilman Mevayer sein. Because what we're trying to explain here, as the ganze Inyan for Shtus de Luma Zeh by Ayid, that this entire idea of Shtus of the other side by Ayid is das nit kein from Tumah Chas v'Shalom. This is not, God forbid, impurity, God forbid, as is managed v'maisa the Hemel Shal. It's only the act of an animal for temporary. We bring this pasuk to point out what the sin is, that in the end of the day, it's only a temporary separation, but eventually it'll be v'nikso zera, it'll be having seed, and by nidach men of nidach, nobody will be pushed away. So the Rebbe said two things. First, the thing, because of we're a wife, that's why everything is so important. And number two, to also encourage us that this is only for a temporary situation. This is all about a suspicion. And yes, the suspicions shouldn't even be there because that alone is a Maisa Behema, but this is only temporary. Ois Dalet. Rebbe explained about the Baal as Oid Mehalt, as is do Ametzias, Oiser Lakus, is as Akfir B'Achdusah. If you consider that there is any entity besides godliness, that is already a denial in Hashem's unity. Umefrat I meveis, especially if you know that's even in your mind, just thinking that it could be something else besides Hashem, that's already denying Hashem's oneness, that there's nothing besides Hashem. Especially, Eid Meveis has been his durchgefallen in Adarabona Nochar. If we know that we have failed in the rabbinical, and even more serious, was das is doch adulach shtus. That is the spirit of foolishness. Kommen doch meinen, so one can think, wer steht, the Apostle, Batomer Tzina Zavani Hashem, while the Shem Shcheichoni, Tzion, didn't say God has left us and Hashem forgot us. So This is what the pasuk we're trying to say. No. Berekman of them, then pasuk is Sishta Ishta. That's why we bring this the verse of Sishta Ishta. As Azevi the Isha Shenistera, just as the woman who has gone into sleep. Hagam as Lisho Kala is the Asur Zumbal, even though for a short while she's prohibited to her husband. Rabbi Emerson is just not kintuma, but really it's not a defilement. The lacher v'tzitzim tzurek muter. Then later on she becomes permitted to him. And even more, not just permitted that she will have seed. So the Gemara zog the roof. The Gemara says, "What is mitzvah Nizra Zara?" It's a great blessing. That hoiso yeledes bitzari yeledes berevach. If she would, until this point, give birth with pain, now the Nizra Zara she will give birth in a comfortable and easy way. If she would give birth nekavis to females, now she will give birth to males. There's even another opinion in Gemara. If she was a barren woman, she will be remembered, she'll have children. So this is the lesson. Same thing is true, even though each person knows by himself. The spirit of the other side of foolishness that he exists with. He need not fall down by himself and not feel dejected. He should know that God forbid he never really became my glory, my honor, my spark, but those are the mitzvahs of the keys. That's the godly spark which exists by every Jew. Hashem says, I won't give it to anybody else. As his merit, it's only was to show a color that they get told it's only that for a temporary while he was did an act of a behema. But later on, it's v'niksov and Israel will be cleaned and will give seed and will have children. But what is the children? It means they'll have, after temporarily being separated from Hashem, they'll have the children Avav Yira and Bonim Schorim Davke. And here we're saying male, the says Avav Yira Shebi Giosi. That means that when he works it out, it's the masculine Avav Yira. And there will be the union of the husband and his wife, Hashem, with the Yidden. Which means that he will reveal the Shekhinah, the husband, in his soul. The revelation of the inner of the soul. But this is the Bias HaMashiach Proti. This is the personal coming of Mashiach when your soul, the inner of your soul becomes revealed. Because by everybody, that individually, this is a hachone to be as Mashiach HaKlal. This prepares for the coming for the general Mashiach, Mashiach ben David. This is Sichos Yud Shvat Tovshin Yud Gimel.